Hey everyone, welcome back. Previous video we were on the designer tab setting up our options menu layout. We left off by having this welcome message across the top here for new players that arrive, that start up the game before they arrive at the main menu. We want to present them with the screen so that they define their player profile. So what we're going to do now is continue inside the graph and set up the scripted functionality behind this options menu. So let's go ahead and continue. So first thing we'll do is hop over to the graph. Again, we're in the options menu, widget blueprint, and inside the graph we're going to create a variable that is going to be bound to the display of this message. So let's create a variable, and it's going to be called the welcome message. Welcome message viz for visibility, I guess. That's good. And it's going to be of the eSlate visibility type. So eSlate viz, there we go. And let's compile. And let me see one thing. I want to make sure, do we need this to be hidden by default? We do. So let's make it hidden by default. Okay. And we're going to actually hop out of the options menu for a second because we need to make some changes to our game instance. So let's go ahead and our game info instance. Let's go ahead and make those changes. So let's go back to the blueprint, all levels, game info instance. So before we were showing the main menu off the bat, we no longer want to do that. We want to check and see if a save game exists before we show the main menu. So somewhere above this, let's create a custom event. And this custom event will be called save game check. And all it's going to do is, if we right click, we can search for save game with the does save game exist? Not exit, but exist. So we're going to run that check. And it's going to ask for a save slot name. We're going to promote this to a variable, actually. So we'll right click on this, promote it to a variable, which we'll call player settings save. I'm going to compile real quick, and for this node we need to set the value. I'm actually going to name it the same as the node just so it's a little bit easier. So I'm going to copy this and paste this here. So our slot name will be called player settings save. So with that, now we're checking. We can hold B and left click to create a branch, connect up the condition, connect this up. So we've determined that a save game does in fact exist, so then we'll call show main menu. So show main menu. If it does not exist, we want to show the options menu. So we'll say show options menu. And we're also going to have a Boolean to keep track of whether or not we've created a save file already. So I'm going to create another variable. It's just going to be called created save file, question mark. I'm going to hold Alt and drag that in, following the show main menu, and check it. Now, if we don't go to the main menu, we're not going to see our mouse cursor, so we need to set that up here so that you see it on the options menu. So let's get player controller. Let's drag this up and say set show mouse cursor. We'll set that to true. That'll happen again when we show the main menu. It's not going to turn it off. It's not going to hurt anything. It'll be fine. So let's add a commenter on this. And we'll say check for save game. OK. Let's compile and save that. We do need to make one change to our level blueprint for our main menu. So if we go to our level editor viewport here, we go to open the level blueprint. We're no longer going to call show main menu, so we can delete that. We're going to call save game check instead. Like so. So save game check. Then we're going to see if it exists, etc. So let's close this out. Let's save this. We can close that. Don't need the host menu. Let's continue inside of the options menu now. Everything should be good to go. So inside of here, we don't need the event tick. I'm going to delete that. we're going to use the event construct to get an reference to our game instance. So let's right click, get game instance, drag off of this, get, cast to game info instance. Let's connect this up, promote this to a variable. Done this a bunch of times already. This is the game instance ref. Connect that like that. Okay. We also need to perform a save check inside of our options, because if we are at the main menu and we've already assigned our player name and our profile, our setup, every time we go into the options, we want to load that information. So we're going to have to run a save game check here as well. So I'm going to create a new function to handle that. New function, and we'll call it save game check. I'm going to hop back to the event graph and assign that now. Just by dragging it and dropping it in. We'll set up this a little bit later. Okay. Next thing that we'll need is a variable. So I'm going to create a variable. This variable is going to be called entered player name. It's going to be a text variable. Let's assign these to a category too, all of these to a category. So we'll say player settings, and we'll set that in there too. It's not really player settings, but just want to put it in there. Okay, so let's take our enter player name, hold Alt, drag that in, because we're going to set that right now. And let's go ahead and create another variable. This variable is going to be called player info. It's going to be of the player info type. We'll set it under player settings too. And let's take it and drag it in now. So we'll control and drag it in. We're going to break it apart at this point. So break player info. Now we have the player name. Plug that in, like so. The player image, we can right click on this, promote that to a variable. So let's right click on this, promote that to a variable called avatar image. Let's put that under player settings. And let's connect this up like so. And similar to what we did with our server menu, we want to check and see if the name that the player has entered is empty or not. I'm going to create a function to handle that this time. We'll call it empty name check. And it'll have an input, the text type, and it's the name text. So we'll come back to this later as well. We're going to call that now. Plug this in. Got to compile first. Let's compile. Now bring it in. Now it should say name text. There we go. And we're going to take our entered player name, drop that on top. So last thing that we're going to do as part of this event construct here is set up our avatar. So let's create a function for this, and it's going to be called setup. Oops, not just setup, but setup avatar display. Let's go to the event graph, and we'll call that now. Because if we have already selected an avatar, then we want to display the one that we have selected. So we're going to have a function handle that for us. So let's add a comment around this. And this is get game info instance reference set up, or no, check for a save game, and load or assign defaults. That's good enough. Okay, moving down the line, let's go and let's do what happens when a player enters text for their name. One thing I want to fix real quick too. This is called image_0. Let's change this to something better than image_0. Let's see, what do we want to call this? I do want to change that because I don't want to keep it as that. Let's call it the current avatar. So here, nope, not there. This one. So this image doesn't have a name assigned to it. So I'm going to hit F2 on this and say current avatar. So the one we are currently looking at. Compile and save and hop back to the graph. And let's continue now. So we're going to do the player's name. So let's find that. Oh, we forgot to change that as well. Let's change that as well because it's no longer user server name. It's the player's name that's being changed here. So let's fix that too. So that's on this box here. This is now player's user player name. Compile and save. And let's go back. So user player name. Let's add an on text changed for this. And we're going to run the empty name check at that point too. So let's plug that in, plug that in. Okay. That's all we're going to do actually for that. So add a comment around this and say commit text when entered. You could do it if you wanted to. Where is that? You could use the on text commit instead. I just chose not to, but you could if you'd like. So commit text when changed. Check for empty name. Something like that. Okay. Let's return to the main menu. Let's do that. That's going to be easy. The back button here, add an on-clicked. For this, we've done this before. Remove from parent. After we remove from parent, let's get our game instance ref, control drag that in, and show main menu. Let's plug that in like so. Let's add a comment around this. Return to main menu when back is pressed. Some of these I have periods on. Some of the capitalization is different. I'm just all over the place right now. It's fine. It's fine. Let's go ahead and continue the accept button. Let's do that. Add an on-clicked for that. And for this, what we're going to need to do is take our player info, hold control, drag that in. And now we are going to set it. So we're going to drag off this and say set members in player info. And we're going to need to restore some of the pins here too. So let's right click on this and say restore all structure pins. Let's connect this up. Now we can take the entered player name, drag and drop that on top. The player image is going to be avatar image. So let's take that, drag that on top. Like so. We don't need to worry about the other pins here. In fact, we can right click on these and say remove this, and remove that. That's all we need to do. Once we have this, we're going to want to save this information to our save file. We haven't created that yet, so let's create that before we continue with the rest of this script here. So we need to hop up to our save game check. That's where we need to go. So let's open that. Save game check. And similar to what we did at the start of this video, we need to right click and say, does save game exist? Get this up. We're going to promote this to a variable. It needs to be the same slot name that we're using. So we're going to put that to variable, and we called it player settings save. Let's just double check that because that would be bad. Yep, player settings save. That's what we called it. Gonna compile. Gonna select all of this now. Copy and paste it in here. Yeah, I just want to make sure I didn't have a period or something at the end of it. So that's what we have to do there. It's B. Hold B and left click, create a branch, connect this up, connect that up. Now what we're going to do is, if a save game exists, we're going to load it off the true. If it doesn't, then we're going to save the game. So let's create a couple functions for this actually. So let's create a function called saveGame and another function called loadGame. So now back on our saveGame check here, we'll call loadGame if it exists. If it doesn't, we'll call saveGame. Now the other thing we're going to do is we're going to create a Boolean variable here. You'll see why a little bit later. It goes back to our welcome message setting here. So we're going to create a Boolean variable. This variable is called found saveGame question mark. So Boolean. So and let's go ahead and set that now actually. So let's Alt. Set that to true. Let's copy it, paste it, set this to false. So let's compile and save. And let's hop into the saveGame. Let's just do these and get this set of functions out of the way. So let's open the saveGame, and inside of it, what we'll do is right click and say create saveGame object. And it's going to be of the player saveGame class. We're then going to cast to our player saveGame. So, and we'll promote this to a reference. So we'll say promote to variable, and we'll call it saveGame ref. So our reference. And what we'll do now, let's drag this over just a little bit. Kind of like what we did before with the it is valid check. We don't need to recreate this each time. So I'm going to hold Control and drag in that same saveGame ref and say is valid? Question mark. Like so. If it's not valid, go ahead and create it and then promote it to a variable. If it is valid, what we can do then is take our saveGame ref again, hold Control, drag it in, and we can say set s player info. So set s player info. We are now setting it. Move this over just a little bit more. That is valid. It's going to go straight into here. Following the setting of the variable there, into here, like so. And we're going to be setting it with player info. So let's hold Control, drag that in. Or just drag it and drop it on top. It's fine too. And then we need to save the game to the slot. So let's save game to slot. So let's connect this up. Save game object is going to be this. Put that in. Save slot name is going to be player settings save. So user index we don't need to worry about. So all of that's done. Let's go ahead and do the load portion now. If you compile, save. Let's go to the load portion. And on the load portion, it's actually going to be super simple. Let's in here, let's say load game from slot. Pick that up. Slot name, player settings save. Boop. Plug that in like so. Then going to cast to our player save game so that we can access the s player save. So get s player save or player info. And we're then going to set that as the player info. So let's alt drag that in, connect that up, connect that up. So we did load and save game setup. I think we are pretty much done. We can hop back to the event graph and finish off this script here. So now we can say, where's our save game? Save game. Following save game, we're going to set our welcome message here. And hold Alt, drag that in. We're going to set it to hidden. So if we're at the front end menu before we got to the main menu and we got our player profile options menu up, once we click accept, we're going to set it to hidden so we don't see that anymore. Last thing we'll do here is say remove from parent. So remove from parent, remove it from display. And then what we'll do is get our game reference, control drag that in, drag off of it and say set created save file. Again, something that we created at the beginning of this video. It's a little bit longer video, but doing a lot here. I'm going to set that to true. And then we're going to say show main menu. Okay, so this is accept and apply those changes. So let's add a comment around this. Say accept and apply the user changes to the S player info save game. Okay, we're just about done. One more section to do, and then we need to bind all of our properties. We'll do a quick double check, make sure that we aren't missing any defaults that we need to set, and then we should be able to test this. So let's do the cycling of our player images now, our avatars. So for this, let's do the toggle left here, add non-clicked, toggle right, add non-clicked. Move this down just a little bit. Okay. What we're going to need is an array of all of the potential avatars that our players can select from. So let's go ahead and create that. Let's put the rest of these in. Whatchamacallit too, player settings. Not all of these are player settings, but I'm going to put them in there. So let's create a new variable. It's going to be called all avatars. All avatars. It's going to be of the texture 2D type. So texture 2D type. Oops. Texture 2D type reference, I should say. Which it is, but I just wanted to show it again. So we have that. And we also need to make sure it's an array. And we'll also put it in the player settings. So I'm going to compile. And we're going to need to add some elements here. So I'm going to click this plus sign. For however many avatars you want to allow players to select from. I'm going to say 10, like so. We actually need to assign those now. So 0 will be the UE4 logo. The rest of these are just going to be completely random textures because I don't have any cool avatars to select from. So feel free to come back and change these if you'd like, just so that they're different so we can see us cycling through our avatars. Don't want to use the characters either as our avatars unless you'd like to, but I'm just going to pick some avatars here, or some textures. And yeah, these are all terrible. Just about done. It's a terrible avatar. This one? No, I already used that one. This one, and all the way down at the bottom, something I hadn't selected. There we go. Those are great avatars. So with all of those set, we're going to need another variable here. So create one more variable. This variable is going to be called the avatar count. It's going to be an integer. It's not going to be an array. We'll put it in the player settings as well. Let's compile and save. So we'll need this in a moment. Actually, we'll need it right now. Let's alt drag that in. And we're going to set that when we click left or click right. We're going to take our all avatars here, hold control, drag that in. And we're going to, let's see, let's get the length of this. So we'll drag off this and say length. So that'll give us the total number of avatars that we have. It's not zero based like our array is, so it's actually going to return an incorrect value. So we're going to have to subtract 1 from this because it's not zero based, the length. Now what we'll do is we'll take our avatar count here, hold control, drag that in, and we'll subtract 1 from this. So subtract integer minus 1. then going to clamp it. The min is going to be 0. The max is going to be the total number of avatars that we've created. Like so. And then we're going to set that as our avatar count. And what that will allow us to do is now we can take our avatar, all avatars here, copy this, paste it. We can then get from it the avatar count. So. And then we can use that to be our avatar image. So hold Alt, drag that in. Connect this like that. So that's for cycling through our avatar images. Now we're going to do the same thing down here. I'm just going to copy all of this, paste it, plug that in, except this is going to be a plus. Okay, that's cycling through avatars. So let's add a comment around this. Cycle through avatar images. So, okay, I think our graph is done. There might be some additional things that we'll need to do once we start binding our properties. So let's bind our properties and then let's test all of this out. Let's make sure that I have, yeah. Okay, let's go to the designer. And inside of here, we need to bind our text here. So for our, let me compile this. I thought I changed that. I did. So the user player name, let's bind that. And that's going to be bound here. So let's click this. And it's going to be entered player name. So for that, our avatar image, if we select this, is going to be bound to avatar image. And accept button, we need to bind that as well. So our accept button here, we're going to bind this to, let's see, what do we want to bind that to? Did we not create that variable? Oh, we didn't do that yet. We didn't do our empty name check. We still need to do that. So let's go ahead and do that because we don't want the player to hit accept unless they entered a name. So we forgot to do that. So let's go back to the graph. Empty name check. Yeah, we didn't do that. So let's do that. Let's drag off of this and just say text is empty. Hold B left click, create a branch, hook this up, plug that in. And let's take our entered player name here, hold Alt, and drag that in. Copy and paste it, plug that in, plug this in there. This in there. We did this before too. Now we need that variable called accept enabled question mark of the Boolean type under player settings. Let's compile. And we'll Alt drag this in. Connect this to this. Let's copy and paste that. Connect this to this. Set it to true. So that should be good on our empty name check. Let's compile and save. Let's go back to the designer now. Let's select our accept button, which should be under this horizontal box there. Now we can bind that to accept enabled. Like so. Then the other binding that we need to do is our player, our welcome text here. We're going to bind that to our welcome message visibility. So let's compile and save. And the last thing that we'll do is our back button. So our back button, if we get to our welcome message, so the message that appears before our main menu, we don't want to have a back button there because what are we going to go back to? So we're going to hide that in this instance. So for this, what we'll do is a little bit different. Instead of creating a variable for it, we're going to create a binding for it. So we'll create a binding. And for this, move this over. We'll take our welcome message, hold control, drag that in. Going to branch, hold B, left click. Let's hook this up, and drag off this, do equal signs. Does this equal visible? That's what we're checking. If that welcome message is visible, then we're going to use a local variable here. Oh, you know what? I did it on the wrong thing. My bad. Don't want to do it on the behavior because that will just disable or enable the button. So let's remove this binding. And let's hop down to visibility and create it there. So let's create a binding. We're going down the right track, just did it in the wrong graph. Let's hold our gold control, bring in our welcome message viz again, drag off of it to equal sign. Does it equal visible? B and left click to create a branch. This up, plug that in. So now if it's true, we'll promote this to a local variable. So I'm going to right click on this, promote to local variable, which we'll call back button viz for visibility. Alt drag that in now, connect that up, copy paste, connect this up. In both instances, we're going to return here. And we're going to set the true to hidden. So yes, this message is visible. Hide the back button. No, it's not visible. Don't hide the back button. So that's all we're going to do for that. Let's rename this function to toggle back button display. I'm actually going to delete this too because we don't need that. All right, compile and save, and let's test this out. So let's play. Our message is not showing here. Why is that not showing? Let's see. Did we not set some defaults? Probably not. Let's see. Let's go into the options menu. Let's double check our defaults. So this should be set to visible, the welcome message on the graph. Set to hidden by default. Look at the event graph here. Should be visible by default, not hidden, so that you can see it. Go to the designer. It says it's set to visible there. Let's try that again. Oh, it already created the save file for us too. So what we're going to do is let's test this out. Let me go to this. Select on any option in the content browser, and let's show an explorer. Let's go up to the root and go to the saved. Let's go to the save games. Yep, already created that save file for us, so let's delete that. We don't need that. Let's try that again. So now if we play, there we go. So it's supposed to be visible by default. So now we can enter our name. There's no back button. You can cycle through avatars. So this brick one's cool because I hit like a brick wall, right? Except go into options. That message no longer displays. There's our funky name and there's our brick wall. And we could change this again if we wanted to. So like, cool guy, that's my name. Hit accept. Go to options and it saves. If I actually quit and I play now, we don't get that message. We go to options and it shows it there. Why is it showing it there? It shouldn't show it there. There's something that we didn't do. So we're going to have to debug why it's showing this. But we'll fix this in the next video. This is a long video. I want to pause here, and I'll take a look at why it's doing this. Not quite sure off the top of my head. So we'll pause here. We'll pick it back up in the next video where we start working on the Find a Match menu. So we'll do that next, as well as fix this little issue here. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you then.